All right, moving along here. Our next presenter, Sheena Thomas. The name of her presentation is Cake Balls. She is something of a Renaissance woman who is a lifelong learning librarian. When she's not perfecting new cake ball recipes, she sings semi-competitively, crafts non-competitively, attempts to play the piano, and reads all the books. So at this time, let's give Christina a warm PK welcome.
Oh, I don't. Thank you.
Okay,
No,
there you go.
thanks. Hi, so I'm Sheena, actually. Okay. Let's start. Hi, I am Sheena, and it's on the second slide now, so I'll move on. I'm not an accomplished baker. In fact, if you would ask me to bake much else or even decorate a whole cake, I might be at a loss. But I know cake balls. They're kind of labor-intensive for basically being smashed up cake and frosting, but they're so worth the hassle. Those were some I made for my wedding. Cake balls must start somewhere, and that is with the cake. To get started, I like to have all of my ingredients set out and measured and my supplies ready, so once I start baking, I can just keep going. A square of tin foil like this one on your countertop will make your workspace super easy to clean up and no wasted ingredients. Cream the butter and sugar and whisk the dry ingredients in a separate bowl. Your butter, eggs, and milk should all be at room temperature, so set them out at least an hour and a half before you're ready to start. This facilitates emulsion, which is some science thing that means a more tender cake. Next, the eggs and extracts. I crack my eggs into a clear ramekin so I can make sure there aren't any stray shells floating around. This is an extract and fruit juice mixture used in my lemon cake. You can use a cake mix, but it's fun to experiment with flavors. Once you have a solid chocolate and vanilla recipe, you can really go wild. Now it's time for your liquids and your flour combination that we whisked up earlier. You'll add flour, milk, and then flour, but make sure you scrape down the edges of the bowl after each addition. I use all kinds of things to substitute for milk as my liquid, depending on the recipe. Liquids and extracts are where baking get real. Pureed strawberries, soda, fruit juice, brewed tea, whatever you want. This is where your flavor combinations really start to take shape. Pair that fruit with a strawberry extract, and you've got something so sweet and delicious. Take it one step further with a strawberry icing. But back to our cake. Keep mixing your batter until it's very well blended, being careful not to overmix or undermix. How to mix? That is the baker's dilemma. If you're adding anything to your cake, now is the time. I like to add sprinkles before the cake bakes, and then one more spoonful once I'm ready to start balling. Once you've baked, you'll want to wait for your cake to cool completely before moving on to the next steps in the process. A food processor like this one will make sure your cake balls err on the side of truffle-like smoothness, but you can also crumble your cake by hand. Again, have all your materials and supplies at the ready. We're about to get messy. This is the consistency of cake that we're looking for. The smoother your crumbs, the smoother your cake balls. I'm not on the level of homemade frosting yet, but store-bought comes in a wide enough variety of flavors. Usually, depending on the cake, you'll use 50 to 75% of a 15-ounce jar of frosting to get the right texture for your cake balls. For what comes next, we'll want to wash early and wash often. To mix your cake and frosting properly, you've got to get in the cake and knead it. Take off your jewelry, wash your hands one more time for good measure, and mix it up. Keep your frosting ready here, just in case you discover you haven't added enough halfway through. As you saw in the previous slide, I have a handy baller to make sure my cake balls are relatively the same size. Your total cake ball yield per cake will depend on what kind of cake you're making. Generally, one chocolate cake gives me over 50 cake balls. You can keep your uncovered cake balls in the fridge overnight, but it's best to coat them sooner rather than later. I use a Baby Cakes mini crock pot to melt my candy coating. Still got my eye out on the double dipper, but the mini pot works great and holds exactly one 12-ounce bag of candy melts. The crock pot's a handy tool to use. You can microwave the wafers, but they're ruined if you overheat them. The crock pot keeps the coating the perfect temperature and consistency. I've tried a number of different methods over the year for coating cake balls. This one did not work very well. However you do this when you try this at home, you'll need some method of getting that excess coating back into the crock pot so it's not wasted. If you play your balls right, you can get over 30 cake balls out of one bag of wafers. This is the method I finally settled on. Position your cake ball on the edge of a fork and spoon the candy coating on top. Tap the fork on the side of the crock pot to get rid of your extra coating, and then slide the cake ball onto a wax-covered surface. Make sure your cake balls are room temperature before you start coating, or your coating will crack, as you'll see on some of mine. Before the coating sets, you'll want to draw a little ring around the edge with a toothpick. It'll make the finished product much cleaner around the edges. If you're adding a topping like sprinkles, you'll also want to do that before the coating sets. A topping like caramel or frosting, you'll want to wait until after the coating hardens. Careful not to top with anything too warm, or your coating will start to melt. Now, once you've got your technique down, you can play around with shapes. In addition to hand rolling, you can buy all sorts of molds to make beautiful, delicious cake ball creations. Now, I would like to share my passion with you all. Thank you all for listening to me ramble on about cake. I'm going to read my first slide because it has some very important information. Hi, I'm Sheena, and I'm obsessed with cake balls. If you've never had a cake ball before, it's the perfect blend of cake and frosting covered in a hard-top candy shell and topped with goodness. You're about to learn how to make them. And I hope all of you who are gluten and dairy tolerant will enjoy some of my chocolate cake balls right now. You're welcome. You want some? It's kind of heavy. You want to pass it down?
Tell me we don't treat you nice, huh? Thank you, that was great. For those of you that may have given up chocolate and candy and sweets for Lent, today, because of Pachaca, the Pope has declared special dispensation for you. So please feel free to imbibe. And I myself, being an ex-altar boy, also give you dispensation.